Is Russia ready to take on the deadly German supertank? Well, we'll find out. The war between Russia and Ukraine is advancing as each day passes with no end sight. Due to this prolonged conflict, resources are being used up, and while the United States has openly supported Ukraine by providing it with weapons, Germany is also thinking of sending one of the most deadly tanks with the hope that it would bring the war to an end. What are the features of this German tank? Does it have what it takes to put an end to the Russo-Ukrainian war? Join us as we delve into the destructive feature of the deadly German supertank that shocked the Russian. In February, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz announced a significant shift in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, leading to major changes in Germany's defense policy. However, Germany is still hesitant to send certain heavy weapons like battle tanks to Ukraine and should take a stronger leadership role in European security. Since the end of January, the country has invested about $1.16 billion in military aid to Ukraine, including weapons, equipment, and financial aid for military purposes. It is worthy of noting that Germany has provided more aid than France, but less than the UK and Poland. Initially, they sent basic equipment like helmets, but it has since sent heavier weapons like rocket launchers, howitzers, anti-aircraft guns, armored vehicles, and air defense systems. The first air defense system has arrived in Ukraine, with the rest expected in 2023 due to production delays. And now, this country is also deliberating whether to send one of their most powerful attack tanks, the Leopard 2, to Ukraine. Let's get into the intriguing details of this battle tank. The Leopard 2 was made by Krauss-Maffei in the 1970s and became operational in 1979, replacing the older Leopard 1 tank in West Germany's army. However, different versions of the Leopard 2 are still used by Germany and 13 other European countries, as well as countries like Canada, Chile, Indonesia, and Singapore. Some countries have permission to produce and develop the battle tank locally. The Leopard 2 tank has two main versions. The first version includes tanks up to the Leopard 2A4, which have vertical turret armor. The second version, starting with the Leopard 2A5, has angled turret armor and other upgrades. All Leopard 2 tanks have a 120mm cannon that was made by Rheinmetall, a digital fire control system, a laser rangefinder, and advanced night vision. They are also powered by the powerful V12 twin-turbo diesel engine made by MTU Friedrichshafen. Even as the Leopard 1 was just starting to be used, the West German military wanted a better tank for the next decade. This led to the start of the MBT-70 project with the United States in 1963. By 1967, it was uncertain if the MBT-70 would ever be ready, so the West German government asked Porsche to research upgrades for the Leopard 1. This study, called the Gilded Leopard, aimed to add new technology to the Leopard design. Proposed upgrades included an autoloader, a coaxial autocannon, and an independent commander's periscope. The anti-air machine gun could be operated from inside the tank, and a TV camera was added on a mast. The turret and hull were reshaped with cast steel armor, and improvements were made to the suspension, transmission, and engine exhaust vents. After the Gilded Leopard study ended in 1967, the West German government decided to focus on experimental development to see what upgrades could be made to the Leopard 1 and to create parts for a future main battle tank. Initially, they invested 25 million DM, but after realizing this wasn't enough, the budget increased to 30 to 32 million DM. The project was given to Krauss-Maffei, which had to work with Porsche on the chassis and Wegmann on the turret. Two prototypes with different components were built to improve the Leopard 1's firepower to meet the MBT-70 standards. The main goals were to achieve high accuracy at 2,000 meters and to hit moving targets accurately using a computerized fire control system. These vehicles were called Keiler. The MBT-70 was an innovative tank design, but due to high costs and technical problems, Germany left the project in 1969. Attempts to fix the main issue, which was the driver's seat in the turret, failed, and by late 1969, Germany decided to stop the joint development. The Assistant Secretary of the Military Procurement Division suggested reusing as many MBT-70 technologies as possible in a new project called Eber, after his name, Eberhard. The Eber had a modified MBT-70 turret and hull, with the driver seated in the hull. However, only a wooden model was made. A year later, it was decided to continue development based on the earlier Kyler project instead of finishing the Aber. In 1971, the new design was named Leopard 2, and the original Leopard was renamed Leopard 1. Paul Werner Krapke became the project officer for the Leopard 2 program. Initially, two versions were planned: the Leopard 2K with a regular gun and the Leopard 2FK with the XM150 gun launcher from the MBT-70. In 1971, 17 prototypes were ordered, but only 16 hulls were built because the production of hull PT-12 was canceled. Initially, 10 were ordered, and then another 7. The turrets were numbered T1 to T17, and the hulls were numbered PT-1 to PT-11 and PT-13 to PT-17. Each prototype had different components to test various ideas. 10 turrets had 105mm guns, and 7 had 120mm guns. Hulls PT-11 and PT-17 had a hydropneumatic suspension from the MBT-70 design and only 6 road wheels. Different types of auxiliary power units were used. All turrets had a machine gun for air defense except for PT-11, which had a 20mm autocannon. Most prototypes used the MB-873 engine, except for hulls PT-07, PT-09, PT-15, and PT-17. The road wheels were from the MBT-70, and the return rollers were from the Leopard 1. The prototypes weighed about 47.5 tons and had welded turrets with spaced armor. In mid-1973, Wegmann designed a new turret called the Spitzmaus-Turm, which saved 1.5 tons in weight. This design used the new EMS-13 optical rangefinder, which required less space. However, after the Yom Kippur War, higher protection was needed, and the Spitzmaus-Turm was never produced. The weight limit was increased to approximately 55 tons. The T-14 turret was modified to test new armor, and the MS-13 rangefinder, resulting in a blockier look. This modified turret, called T-14 Mod, had a fully electric turret drive and stabilization system developed by General Electric and AEG Telefunken. In July 1973, German Defense Minister Georg Leber and U.S. Defense Secretary James R. Schlesinger agreed that standardizing main battle tanks would benefit NATO. They decided that using components developed for the Leopard 2 in the U.S. XM1 Abrams tank could lower costs. A German team went to the U.S. to evaluate this idea, but U.S. law prevented public bidders from interfering in private sector contracts. To meet U.S. Army requirements, the Leopard 2 prototypes were modified. On December 11, 1974, Germany and the U.S. signed a Memorandum of Understanding to test a modified Leopard 2 against the XM1 prototypes. Germany sent a complete prototype, a hull, a vehicle for ballistic tests, and special parts to the U.S. for testing at no extra cost. The Leopard 2 AV was developed to meet U.S. and German protection standards. The T-14 MOD turret was used as a base, and the final ballistic trials took place in June 1976. The turret of prototype PT-19 was fitted with a laser rangefinder developed with Hughes. Compared to earlier prototypes, the Leopard 2 AV had a simplified fire control system. Many components, including the EMES-12 optical rangefinder, various sensors, the commander sight, grenade launcher, and other equipment were removed. The design and production took longer than expected, delaying its shipment to the U.S. It couldn't be tested before September 1, 1976. Despite Germany's hope for simultaneous testing with the XM1 prototypes, the U.S. Army tested the XM1 prototypes from Chrysler and General Motors first. 2 new prototype hulls and 3 turrets were sent to the U.S. PT-20 had a 105mm rifled L7 gun and a Hughes fire control system. PT-19 had the same fire control system, but could switch to a 120mm Rheinmetall smoothbore gun. PT-21 had the Krupp Atlas electronic EMS-13 fire control system and the 120mm Rheinmetall gun. The Leopard 2 AV met U.S. requirements. A study by FMC Corporation showed it was possible to produce it in the U.S. within cost limits set by the U.S. Army. Before the trials finished, the focus shifted to common components between the two tanks, rather than the U.S. Army adopting the tank. FMC chose not to submit a proposal, believing the U.S. Army wouldn't adopt a non-U.S. developed tank. The U.S. Army found the XM1 had more special armor coverage than the Leopard 2 AV, due to different threat perceptions and the rushed design of the Leopard 2 AV. In mobility trials, the Leopard performed as well or better than the XM1 prototypes. The AGT-1500 turbine engine used more fuel, while the deceived wheel tracks on the Leopard 2 AV were more durable. The MTU diesel engine had a lower heat signature. The fire control system and sights of the Leopard 2 were better, and its 120mm gun was superior. The cost for one XM1 tank was $728,000 in 1976, and the Leopard 2 AV was $56,000 more. The decision to produce the Leopard 2 for the German Army was made after a study showed it would provide greater combat potential than producing more Leopard 104 tanks or an improved Leopard 104 with better guns, armor, fire control, and engines. Before production began in 1979, the Leopard 2 designs underwent various changes. The engine, transmission, and suspension were improved, and the ballistic protection of the turret and hull was enhanced. The part of the tank that holds ammo in the hydraulic system was separated from where the crew sits and had special panels added. Some new parts were added to the Leopard 2 tank during its development and later after testing in the US. They chose a cheaper laser rangefinder from Hughes over a better one because it was already made and less expensive. A German company modified the rangefinder to fit the needs of their army. They tried to put a US engine in the tank, but it didn't work well, so they stopped the project. Germany ordered some tanks in the late 1970s and early 1980s. The first batch had 380 tanks, and they were finished by 1982. They ordered more tanks in additional batches, ending with a total of 2,125. The tanks were made at a steady pace during the Cold War, but slowed down later. The company could speed up production again if needed. Unlike earlier versions, which were mostly the same, the Leopard 204 came with a new computer for aiming and a better system for putting out fires. Starting from the 6th group of tanks, they added stronger armor and new side protection. In 1984, the German military wanted upgrades for the Leopard 2, and they began a program called Komfortsteigerung to improve the tanks, and they had official requirements. The KWS program had 3 parts. The first part upgraded the gun barrel and mount to make it more powerful. They made 225 Leopard 206 tanks this way, starting in 2001. The second part focused on making the tanks safer by adding better armor. They upgraded 225 tanks to Leopard 2A5 between 1995 and 1998, and another 125 from 1999 to 2002. The third part of the plan was to replace the Leopard 2's turret with a new one that had a bigger tank gun, an autoloader, and a battlefield management system. They also wanted to make the hull better protected. Originally, they wanted 650 tanks with these upgrades, but it didn't happen. They tested the bigger gun, but decided not to go through with it in 1995. Instead, they used the money for another project. They made the Leopard 205, which had better protection against certain types of mines. It weighs about 62.5 tons. The newest version is the Leopard 2A7, which started with 20 tanks in 2014. They're already planning to make it even better, especially its optics. In 2015, there was talk about the Leopard 2's bullets not being able to penetrate some Russian tanks, so they're working on a new type of bullet just for the Leopard 2A7. In the same year, Rheinmetall said they're working on a new bigger gun for the Leopard 2 that would perform much better, with plans to start selling it in 2016. The Leopard 2 started being used in 1979, and it's expected to be used until around 2030. In May 2015, Germany's Ministry of Defense said they're working with France on a new tank to replace both the Leopard 2 and the Leclerc tanks. They're looking into different ideas and technologies to figure out what the new tanks should be able to do. Before they introduce the new tank, they'll make some improvements to the Leopard 2, like adding a new digital system for the turret, a better way for the crew to see what's going on around them, and a system to protect against attacks. They'll also make the tank's gun more powerful in the short term, and then work on making it even better in the future. This is because tanks like the Russian T-14 Armata are getting better at defending themselves, So having a strong gun is more important than ever. The Leopard 2 tank has special armor all over it. This armor is made up of different kinds of materials like steel plates and flexible stuff. The steel plates are really hard and strong. They figured out how to make this armor by studying how explosive shells work. The armor might be based on something called Burlington armor, which the British showed to West Germany in 1970. In the mid-1970s, West Germany got all the details about Burlington. The front of the Leopard 2's armor is made to stop big bullets and explosive shells. In the 1980s, they thought the front of the Leopard 2 could even stop bullets that were 125 millimeters big, fired from far away. Its tank's armor is about 800 millimeters thick, according to guesses from former soldiers. On later versions like the Leopard 2A5, the armor got even thicker, up to 1,500 millimeters. The sides and back of the tank can stop bullets from heavy machine guns, medium-sized guns, and older tank bullets. To protect against things like rockets and grenades, the sides of the tank have extra armor panels. The front part of the sides has heavy armor panels, while the rest has panels made of steel and rubber. The bottom of the tank's sides are angled and reinforced to protect against mines. The Leopard 2 tank is designed to keep dangerous stuff away from the crew. In the turret, things like ammo and hydraulics are in separate compartments from where the crew sits. If something explodes, special panels on the compartment roofs push the explosion and fire away from the crew. The crew is also protected from things like nuclear, biological, and chemical threats. The tank has a special system that keeps the inside safe from these dangers. There are smoke mortars on the sides of the turret that can shoot smoke to hide the tank. Most of these German tanks have 4 smoke mortars on each side, but Dutch ones have a different system with 6 barrels on each side. Some other tanks, like the Swedish Stridsvagn 122, use a similar smoke system to the French Leclerc tank. The tank has a system to put out fires. There are 4 big fire extinguisher bottles, each weighing about 9 kilograms, placed behind the driver's seat on the right side. These bottles are connected to pipes and hoses. If the temperature inside the tank gets too hot, above 82 degrees Celsius, the fire detection system will automatically make these bottles spray to put out the fire. There's also a smaller fire extinguisher weighing about 2.5 kilograms stored under the main gun. Since the Leopard 2 started being used in 1979, they've been making the armor better bit by bit. Starting from the 97th tanks in the 6th group they made, they started using a new type of armor that's spaced out in layers. In the same group, they also added better protection on the sides of the tank. When they upgraded tanks to the Leopard 2A5 version, they cut open the roof and put in new armor. They added special armor panels to the front of the turret that look like arrowheads, which make the tank safer against different types of bullets and explosives. They also improved the armor on the sides of the tank. They put in a special liner that's 25 millimeters thick to protect the crew if the armor gets penetrated. The Leopard 2A7 has even better armor, especially on the bottom to protect against things like mines and bombs. They can also add more armor or special systems to protect against rocket-propelled grenades. In city fights, tanks can get different armor sets. These sets, like the Leopard 2A4 in can, Leopard 2 PSO, and Leopard 2A7, can have thick armor on the sides of the turret and body. They also can add slat armor on the back. This armor helps protect against RPG-7 rockets, which can pierce steel armor from 11 inches to 24 inches deep, depending on the warhead. The Leopard 2A6M can has even more protection against RPGs with extra slat armor. Various companies have made more armor upgrades. For instance, IBD Diesenroth made upgrades with Mexus and AMAP composite armor. RUAG developed an upgrade with SidePro ATR composite armor. These upgrades make the tanks more resistant to mines and IEDs by adding a special plate under the tank. Also, the German Defense Ministry decided to get Trophy, an Israeli-made active protection system for 17 German tanks. They plan to finish adding it by 2023. The Leopard 2 tanks' protection levels vary from 23 to 27 inches on the turret and 24 inches on the front hull. The Leopard 2A4 can withstand around 28 inches against certain attacks. Its main gun is the Rheinmetall 1/10 mm smoothbore, similar to the one used on the M1 Abrams tank. It stores 27 rounds in the hull and 15 rounds in the turret. If the turret's ammo storage is hit, an explosion would go upwards. However, if the hull is hit, there's a risk of secondary explosions due to stored rounds, which is a design flaw. Thanks for watching. While you are still here, click on the link on your screen to check out another of our videos. See you there.